When in certain parts of the world, some cultural sites feel threatened as well as safeguarded, the 42nd session of the World Heritage Committee 2018 establishes itself for the first time in Bahrain as an arena for delegates all over the world to join hands in exchanging experience among the site managers. The main aim focused on the protection of significant properties and places of outstanding universal value. The forum is all geared to wrap the coat of protection through reactive monitoring.
Thank you very much, and also allow me to thank the government of Bahrain for hosting us as site managers of World Heritage Sites from different parts of the continent. The session today was about identifying the needs of site managers who are managing World Heritage Sites all over the world. And we sat in different groups and we were discussing three principal things. One is the role and the responsibilities of site managers, what it should be, where we should be going in the future. And in that discussion, we agreed that, or we are recommending that site managers have to be given a prominent role in promoting World Heritage Sites, in the decision-making mechanisms of the World Heritage Committee, and even in representation at World Heritage Committee meetings. And the second thing that we also discussed was around capacity building needs. We need to continuously build capacity so that site managers are able to respond to the emerging challenges at their respective World Heritage Sites. And some of the areas that we have identified are cross-cutting disciplines, such as financial management, fundraising skills, communication skills, and more importantly, conflict resolution management skills, given that our sites are in a constant mode of conflict because there are different stakeholders with different perspectives, with different needs on the same side. So we need to be able to go through those contestations and still maintain the integrity and the OUV and the authenticity of our World Heritage Site. And also under capacity building needs, we looked at how we can influence job profiles or the responsibilities of World Heritage Site managers, because this is a term that is not embraced in many countries. We have different titles, we have different responsibilities, but we're also looking at a way of unifying and standardizing their responsibilities so that we are at par and we are looking at almost similar things at our World Heritage Sites. The Chief Heritage Officer for Robben Island World Heritage Site in South Africa. Robben Island World Heritage Site is located in Western Cape, which is one of the provinces of South Africa. It was inscribed as a World Heritage Site in 1999, and the outstanding universal value resides in the triumph of human spirit against great adversity. This is the site where Nelson Mandela was incarcerated after being arrested for fighting against and for working against the apartheid regime in South Africa. He spent 18 years on that island. But Nelson Mandela is not the only prisoner that was on Robben Island. There are other 3,500 ex-political prisoners that were there who came from different political formations with different political motivations, but they had a common enemy, and that common enemy was apartheid. So that's the site that I manage. It's also, Robben Island World Heritage Site is also a tourism destination. It's one of the big 7 tourist attractions in Western Cape, and we receive about 350,000 tourists per year. So we really have to have effective visitor management strategies, because this is a very small island, and any impact on the island could actually destroy the values that we are protecting. Apart from that, also, the site that I manage it has got other different values that are not even recognized as part of the World Heritage, but we also protect them. This includes biodiversity. We have penguins on Robben Island, and penguins are is an endangered species, and we have to do everything that we can as a site to protect them. Also related to the whole issue around the resilience, triumph of the spirit, is that the island at some point, it was used as a banishment landscape for traditional chiefs who resisted colonialism and who resisted colonial efforts both by the British and the Dutch when they invaded South Africa. It was also used as a banishment landscape for people who had leprosy. They were separated from the community on the mainland and left on the island to be healed, and some of them they passed on the island. So we have a very large cemetery that we use as a memorial landscape to celebrate their resilience and their ability to survive on the island. And then also the island was used at some point as a defense line during the Second World War. So we have a Second World War military installations that were installed by the then government of South Africa as part of the defense line. So we range from resistance to triumph on Robben Island. We're a symbol of reconciliation and social cohesion in South Africa. We visited the fort yesterday, and I must confess, it was awesome. There's a difference between reading about the fort in a book and then walking through the fort. You begin to appreciate so many elements, and the highlight for me was the creativity in which the site managers are presenting the site, the light show. It was really fantastic. It summarized the whole layered history of the fort and how Bahrain has evolved from that history to become this democratic nation and to become this destination that everybody wants to come and see. And also what really struck me when we visited is also the level and the detail of the museum, how you walk through time, but without realizing that you are walking through a building, and that's very, 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 very informative. And thank you for allowing us to have access to original artifacts in the museum, to interact with them and be part of the experience. In my country, let me start with reactive monitoring. We have 10 World Heritage Sites in South Africa. So we are one of the African state parties that has more World Heritage Sites. So what it means is that we mustn't celebrate the status of being a World Heritage Site. We have to do what it takes to maintain the status. So we use the reactive monitoring as part of our monitoring mechanisms, where we identify issues at our sites. We then take appropriate action and implement mitigation measures. For example, at Robben Island, we had a reactive monitoring mission in 2011. It identified quite a number of issues, including capacity building, the need to develop a disaster risk plan, the need to enhance our collections management processes, the need to promote an inclusive and holistic interpretation. So we had about 11 recommendations coming through the reactive monitoring mission undertaken by the World Heritage Center, jointly with IUCN, which is an advisory body focusing on nature, ICOMOS, which is an advisory body focusing on culture, and ICROM, which is an advisory body which focuses on capacity building and training. So out of those 11, we have achieved almost like 90%. We now have a disaster risk plan. So without the reactive monitoring mission or recommendations, we wouldn't have developed that disaster risk. We now have a solid and effective collections management policy that covers our artifacts and our archives. We have built capacity. We have recruited experts to head various functions. For example, conservation, research, built environment, even archival management and environment. So it really helps in identifying challenges and setting in motion mitigation measures. In terms of capacity building, I think what is important is that World Heritage institutions or institutions that manage heritage in Africa, they're evolving. We have to continuously review our capacity to deliver on conservation, our capacity to implement the management plans that we submit to UNESCO. So for us at Robben Island, it's a continuous process. Firstly, we have an internal process, which is a performance management system, which helps us to identify the needs and capacity areas. And then, of course, the reactive monitoring mission also points to certain capacities. We then integrate those recommendations and say, what is the cost-effective way of recruiting the capacity that we don't have? Secondly, what is the cost-effective way of improving or imparting skills that we don't have to our existing staff? So it's a parallel process where we recruit, we also build capacity from within, and we've been doing that at Robben Island, and I'm happy to say that we are doing well. We now have a solid team that looks at the different aspects of the island. So we are emphasizing interdisciplinary approach in our capacity building, so that we are not jack of all trades, but we maximize on different experts and effectively deliver on the management plan that we submitted to UNESCO.